Well, good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome again to my class. This gonna be the third meeting, right? So let me first refresh your mind about the meeting two and meeting one's materials. In the meeting one, I think we talk about the terms, the terminologies of testing, measurement, and assessment in general, evaluation, and so on. And the second meeting, I think we talk about the what, why, and how. In this case, we have already discussed everything with the class, I think, last meeting, and there are so many things that we got from the first and second meetings, among other things, a watchback and the discrete and integrated point and so on. So, and today's meeting will be, today's meeting topic will be the purpose, type, and quality of assessment. Let me start from saying something about the the purpose. When we talk about the purpose of assessment, I think we need to know some some kinds of whether our tests represent the questions of why do we test, why do we assess something in the classrooms. And then I think in the book that we have used as the main materials, I think it is mentioned two different kinds of things in relation to the purpose of the assessment. As assessment for the learning and assessment of learning. So there are two different different terminologies. Let me explain these kinds of these two different terminologies. The first one is assessment for learning. Let us see the slide. It refers to the process of seeking and interpreting evidence for use by students and their teachers to decide where students are in their learning process. It is a kind of to talk about ways of assessment in implementing the assessment in the classroom to know the progress of the students. So when you are teaching, then something like to ensure whether your students are still on task or not, or what kinds of progress, to what extent you are teaching, you are you are accomplishing the teaching goals or the learning at outcomes. In this case, needs a kinds of it kinds of measurement, and this is the functions of the assessment in this understanding. What I mean is that the teacher should should use the assessment for learning process as the most outstanding terms in this case is formative assessment. So formative assessment is the assessment that you do in the middle of the teaching to find out the progress. And the second one, or the second terms, is assessment of learning, not for. That's the first one is for, and then the second one is of, using the word of. So assessment of learning means assessment that happened after learning has occurred, to determine whether learning has happened or not. So this is to find out the goal, whether the goal is achieved or not. So the teacher should make sure that the learning process has already been given, and to find out the end of the teaching, we call this as assessment of learning. So we call it as a summative assessment, yeah. And there are different purposes. Some other experts said that test or assessment can have different purposes. something like this in the slide. I think you can see first one is assessment to find out progress. This definition or this purpose is likely to be the same with the previous this I mentioned earlier, the two big things, test assessment for and assessment of learning. You can later on find out from these kinds of purposes. Okay, let me give you the first one, assessment to find out progress. This is the reason to give an assessment is to find out how well your students have mastered the language areas or skills. So try to find a kinds of progress. It is the same with the previous one in the first terms, language assessment for learning. Yeah, this is finding the progress of the students. So usually the teacher find out this test or the assessment after a few days or a few weeks of the teaching. And then secondly, assessment to encourage learners. I think it is a kind of to reach whether your students can reach the goals. You try to encourage. I mean, during the teaching and learning process, the teacher should make sure that the students are on task or not. If they are not on task, then you can encourage the students by having such kind of information. You have to, by having such kind of assessment, you have to. You will be given a kinds of information about your students, and you can make encouragement or you can motivate the students if the students are not on task or on the track. So this is assessment to encourage learners. The third one is assessment to find out learning difficulties. I think this is a kind of like a doctor diagnosis an illness of the patients or something like patient's disease. So teachers should also diagnose problems or difficulties in order that he or she can teach effectively. So the teachers, I think, need to know the students' difficulties in learning. Otherwise, they cannot teach effectively. So to find these specific weaknesses of the students or problems of the students, we need an assessment in the middle or during the learning process. This is called assessment to find out learning difficulties. Next, learning or assessment to find out achievement. I think this is called achievement assessment or achievement test. It is very clear that every student should be measured about their mastery of what should have been taught. So I think concerning with the sample which represent the achievement, I think you need a kinds of this kinds of assessment. So assessment to find out the achievement means the functions of the assessment in this case is to know the sample of the student's achievement. And then the next is assessment to place the learners. I think sometimes in the beginning of the class, teachers need to know the students' competence, pre-competence, or the preconditions of the students. To know that, you need a test or you need an assessment to choose or to select your students to put somewhere in learning groups, something like that. So something like in the beginning of the course, you have to be able to do that in pre-test or pre-assessment, something like that. And the next is assessment to find out proficiency. It is a little bit the same, but they have slightly different. I mean, slight differences with the achievement. So achievement and proficiency. Proficiency means something like a certain task of specific aspects of field, like for example, reading. If you see reading proficiency means you have to cover the reading in certain aspects of reading. But if you use the word achievement, then what you achieve for certain syllabus, part of syllabus. So to distinguish between achievement and proficiency, meaning that you means that you have to know what kinds of goals do you achieve. If the goal is coming from the syllabus, it is called achievement. If the goal is coming from the the general area of knowledge, it is called proficiency. For example, you say English achievement and English of proficiency. How will you say English of achievement if you need to achieve the goal of English stipulated English proficiency or English competence or English skills stipulated in the syllabus. So you make it by yourself of the syllabus of others. It is called proficiency. When it is called proficiency, I mean achievement, the first one, and the second one is it is called proficiency when you want to achieve the goal stipulated or taken from the general area or the existing area of field, like English proficiency means certain standard of English ability, something like this. Okay, next, when we talk about purpose of assessment, I think other experts also, provide you certain things like this one to distinguishing the purpose of assessment by talking about instruction and administrative and student center. So instructional functions of the test or instructional purposes of the assessment means when you use the test to gather information about student understanding and skills in general. It's just instruction, concerned with instruction teaching. And then when you see individual students, you focus on the individual students for your assessment. It means that you are identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the students, and you call it as a student center purpose of assessment. While when you focus on the about whether you get the student pass or not, you get the students can go ahead after to select other next course or not. This is called administrative. For example, after you take the the assessment of language testing, you are able to find the other courses, for example. That this is called kind of administrative functions of tests. So from this definition and the previous definition of purpose of assessment, I think we can conclude something that classifying purpose of the assessment depends very much on the underlying stance we use. So what kinds of stance we use to define the purpose of the assessments. And the next one is types of assessment. I think talking about types of assessment is a little bit complex because you have to see at least the items formats or task formats. If you see the item formats, it means that you can divide into several types of assessment by seeing the format or the item formats, the items of the test. The items of the test means you can have multiple choice tests, true and false, matching, you can ordering, and then information transfer and so on. So this is based on the item formats, but sometimes you have to see the task formats. Task formats means you have essay test, summary, written report, information gap, oral interview, role plays, and so on. So these kinds of formats determine the types of the assessment. And talking about the types of assessment, I think we need to see again the assessment task. You know what is meant by assessment task is what parts of assessment do you have? So generally, we have the so-called instruction, input, and expected response. It's in a set of assessment. You need to give. First one is instruction, what to do, the guidance of what to do for testees, for those who take the test later, and then you also need to put the so-called materials that the learners need. Something like if you make a reading assessment, then you put the so-called reading text. That's a material. If you want to assess the listening comprehension, then you give the listening extract in the tape recorder or whatever. So you can see this as a materials. This is called input. And the next one is expected response. I think it is kinds of what you expect, what you expect from the testees to do or to give the answer. I mean the expected answer of the students. Like for example, if you ask the student to listen the tape recorder and then giving response, you ask your students to give response of the listening, then the response will be in the form of speaking, right? Something like, or you need to the student only to check the multiple choice answers, for example. So the student only do the multiple choice test of this listening after listening the recording. Then next, this is the examples of something like test specifications. When you make a test, you have to be able to describe a kinds of specifications like this. For example, the skill by section order. You have kinds of skills you have to give in your assessment, and then minutes, weight of the points, and then this is the grading, and then a number of tasks, and then you have task type, something like the resource and so on. And from this test specification, you will have test items in the form of test sets. And then the last is the quality of the assessments. I think every test should meet the good quality of a test. And I think these kinds of things, there are several things that will be the requirement for an assessment to have quality. The first one is alignment. I think alignment is a kinds of agreement with the outcomes. Whether your tests represent the learning outcomes you want to achieve or not. If your test is not in line with the learning outcomes, then you don't have any alignment in your test quality. The next one is validity. I think validity is a kinds of whether your test measure what is supposed to measure something. For example, if you have reading test, whether your reading test or your reading assessment measure the reading competence of the students. A writing test, for example, whether your writing require the student to write. This is called validity. Reliability is the consistency of the test, the consistency of the results. So when you give an assessment today, and then your students do the assessment, and you collect the result, and next week you give again the same test with the same students, and you collect the result, and you compare the result. If the result to those two results are correlated, and then you have the so-called reliability of your test. So your test provide consistent result. This is a reliability. And fairness is a kind of the way your test give equal opportunity to the testees or to the students to demonstrate the achievement. So whether your test give the same chance for the students to do the thing, right? And then consequences related to the washback. I think last meeting we talked about the washback. The washback is the impact of the test or the assessment to the teaching, whether your test can have impact on your teaching. It is called consequences. So when you see, okay, my test actually has one of the quality requirement of the quality of the assessment, it has consequences. How do we measure? How do we determine this? By what is it? By looking at the next or the teaching process ahead, something like in the future, or the next teaching, whether the next teaching is getting better in this day or not. If this improve your teaching, then your test or your assessment give the so-called consequence. And then finally, practicality and efficiency. I think this is talking about time and talking about effort. For example, if your test is given to limit to sort for students to do, then it also give some problems to your students in terms of doing the test, because the time is too short. Or the time is too long, because the time is too long, so everyone can do the test correctly, and the information of the scores, the result of the score, the result of the assessment will not give you the students' descriptions of competence, because timing, efficiency, or effort is not comply with. And well, I think validity. Let me give you additional information about validity. We have the so-called content validity, construct validity, empirical validity, phase validity, and predictive validity. So let me give you the explanation one by one. Content validity means whether your assessment or your items or tasks of the assessment represent the area of knowledge, ability to be tested. So, for example, if you have some area of learning, then you want to, the goal is those areas, then so your test should represent those areas. If you refer to the syllabus, parts of syllabus, you want to, your test is, or your teaching goal is stipulated in the syllabus, then your test should represent the materials from the syllabus. This is called content validity. So the content of the test or the content of the assessment should represent the content of the area of knowledge. What about construct validity? I mean, yeah, construct validity is the, assessment. I think this is the same. Construct means related to the aspect of knowledge. The first one is the related to the syllabus, syllabus of the content of the syllabus. I think slightly different, it has slight different. Construct means the construct of knowledge that you want to achieve. Usually when you achieve the proficiency, English proficiency, for example. So in the proficiency, it is stipulated a kinds of area of knowledge you have to achieve. And this is construct of for example, the construct of reading, the construct of listening comprehension, for example. So in the listening, we have a kinds of things like guessing the words, and then what is concluding the title of the text, and so on. That's the construct, right? But what about the content? The content is the the representativeness of the assessment, whether how many percent represent the content. But construct is the constructs of the the knowledge. Empirical validity, I think it arrives to the so-called comparing the results of the measurement. So when you have a test, or when you have an assessment, and then you have a kinds of criteria to compare for your what is it, for your assessment. In this case, you what is it, you have an empirical validity. Face validity is a test appealing, something like what is it, test appeal, something like you look at the face of the test. The test is acceptable measurement for some people, for example. So the extent to which a test appeals to candidate or to choose or to those choosing it on behalf of the candidate. So it is kinds of acceptable measurement of the ability of the test. And then finally, predictive validity. I think it is called predictive because it predicts the future competence of the students or performance of the students. So when your test is called to have predictive validity, your test should be able to predict the future competence of the students or the learners. How do we measure such kinds of things? You have to wait until several times after the test. Then you will see whether those who have high grade in your test will perform better in the future. Something like that. And reliability, I think reliability is the consistency, and there are two kinds of reliability: internal reliability and external or iterator reliability. So internal means you correlate the results of the test. For example, like something like this, you have a test or assessment and you give it to one group of students today, and then you get the scores. And then later on, 2 weeks later, you give the same test to the same students, and then you get the score, and then you compare the two scores in different time and correlate this. If the correlation is high, then your test has internal consistency. And then the iterator, it means to find out the two raters of the test. For example, you have writing assessment, then two person or two teachers evaluate the assessment, and then the result of the two teachers is combined, and you find this as an iterator. Usually to find out or to reduce the subjectivity, you need a kind of iterator reliability. I think that's all for today, students. Thank you for participating this class, and see you again in the next meeting. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning.